Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Fancy Tech. The infamous iPad was first released in April of 2010. And ever since its launch, Apple has sold more than 475 million units of the iPad worldwide. That is about 30 million units more than the total populations of the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK combined. iPads are a type of computer which have been around since the 80s. A premium look, feel, and touch screen functionality are some of the factors that contributed to the worldwide success of the iPads. So let's have a look at the revolutionary changes the iPad went through until now. The first generation iPad, or the first iPad as you may call it, was unveiled in January 2010, and its sales started 3 months later in April. It featured a 32-bit Cortex A8 core processor and a 256MB DDR RAM with a 9.7-inch touchscreen display, and 3 storage variants, 16, 32, and 64, were made available for this device. Using the Apple's standard iOS operating system, the first generation iPads could play music and videos, send and receive emails, and surf the internet. The device could also be used for social media, GPS navigation, and for playing video games by installing the related apps. It featured an 11,580 mAh lithium-ion battery that could keep the device running for 10 hours. 3 million units of the first generation iPad were sold during the first 80 days, and that number jumped to 15 million before the launch of the second generation iPad. The second generation iPad was released in March 2011. It featured a faster dual-core A5 processor, a lighter build structure, and 2 cameras, a VGA front-facing camera for video calling, and a 720p rear-facing camera for pictures and making videos. 5 different variants of this device were introduced in the market, 3 variants based on 16, 32, and 64GB storage capacity, and 2 variants based on connectivity options like Wi-Fi only and Wi-Fi with cellular connectivity. All of these variants could be bought in 2 different colors, either black or white. The battery power of these iPads remained the same as the first generation, but they featured a relatively powerful 512MB RAM that could support heavier apps. The iPad 2 was the first tablet to visit the International Space Station. Astronauts used these tablets to play Angry Birds and for tracking their food consumption using the International Space Station Food Intake Tracker. It was the last iPad that was released under the leadership of Steve Jobs. Often referred to as iPad 3, the third generation iPad was released in March 2012 and featured an Apple A5X chip with a quad-core graphics processor, which provided its processing speed superiority over the previous generation. It also featured voice dictation, support for LTE networks, and a 5-megapixel rear-facing camera that allowed 1080p HD video recording. 9 variations of the third generation iPad were introduced. Customers again could choose from white and black. The same storage options of 16, 32, and 64GB were still common in this generation. And connectivity options like Wi-Fi only and Wi-Fi with 4G LTE. The third generation iPad was about 50 grams heavier than the previous generation, but featured a high-definition Retina display. As compared to the 3 million sales in 80 days for the first generation iPad, the iPad 3 was able to surpass that number in just 3 days. Apple iPad mini. During the fall of 2012, Apple released the iPad mini. The iPad mini had a reduced screen size than the regular iPad. Fitting in any bag and easy to handle, this mini iPad is a favorite for people on the go. With a better screen resolution and cameras, this new iPad was the start of a long line of iPad variations. Released in November 2012, the iPad 4 featured an Apple A6X chip with 1.4 GHz dual-core Apple Swift processor that allowed it to perform CPU-reliant tasks twice as fast as compared to its predecessors. In addition to superior quad-core Power VR for enhanced graphics quality, the iPad 4 also featured Apple's infamous Lightning connector for the first time. Like the previous generation, the first generation iPads featured 9.7-inch Retina display, an 11,560 mAh lithium-ion battery for a 10-hour playback time and a month-long standby time. A year after the fourth generation iPad was released came the Apple iPad Air. This iPad was the first major design change since the iPad 2. Staying with the same 9.7-inch Retina display, the iPad Air was thinner than previous models, resulting in a 22% reduction in weight overall. With this iPad came the front camera that could shoot 720p HD videos with added illumination. Getting rave reviews, the iPad Air was said to have a balance of features, design, and ergonomics that past iPads did not possess. Over the next 2 years came changes between the iPad mini and the iPad Air. 2 weeks after the Apple Air was unveiled came the iPad mini 2. Keeping the same look as the first mini, this iPad boasted the same hardware as the iPad Air, just in a smaller size. A year later came the Mini 3 and Air 2. New features to these devices were the addition of Touch ID sensor and Apple Play compatibility. With the introduction of the iPad OS, the Air 2 was able to support new features such as a mouse and trackpad along with external USBs. In November 2015, the Apple iPad Pro 12.9-inch was released. This larger screen iPad came in 3 color options: silver, gold, and space gray. After a few months, the 9.7-inch display iPad Pro was released to take over from the iPad Air. This computer was faster than its predecessor and featured a true tone flash that allows the LCD display to adapt its color intensity to the ambient light. Both Pro models include an A9X chip and Apple's M9 Motion Core processor. After a 5-year delay, the 5th generation iPad was released in March 2017. The 5th generation iPad supports the latest iOS operating system and features a 64-bit 1.8 GHz dual-core processor with an Apple A9 SoC. The 2GB RAM on the 5th generation iPads is also far superior as compared to its predecessor. The 9.7-inch display remained the same, and 2 storage variants of 32GB and 128GB were sold for the first generation iPads. This generation also includes Touch ID fingerprint sensor that allows users to unlock the device as well as approve purchases from the App Store, iTunes, and iBook Store. Apple Pay and Touch ID also allow the user to purchase items from the Apple-approved websites and apps. This device features an upgraded 8-megapixel rear camera as opposed to the previously installed 5-megapixel rear camera in the 4th generation. This generation also features the upgraded 4.2 Bluetooth for the first time. In the summer of 2017, Apple released the 2nd Pro generation. With integrated Apple Promotion display technology, it supported HDR10 and Dolby Vision content. With a 50% brighter display and 12-megapixel rear-facing camera, the 7-megapixel front-facing camera, and Retina flash, this model was a major step above the rest. USB-C compatible, the iPad Pro 2 had a faster than ever connection speeds. The 6th generation iPad was released in March 2018, exactly a year after the 5th generation. Marketed towards educators and schools, this generation features an Apple A10 Fusion SoC, along with a 2.3 GHz quad-core processor. The storage variants of 32GB, 128GB, along with a 2GB RAM remains the same as the previous generation. But different color variations like space gray, gold, and silver were introduced to match the updated colors of the iPhone 8. The 6th generation iPads stayed about the same weight. These iPads came pre-installed with Apple iWork Suite and also include the Apple Pencil stylus support. Fall of 2018, the iPad Pro 3 was released. This was the thinnest iPad Pro to date. Increasing the internal storage to 1TB allows the iPad to start functioning just like a laptop. Connecting the Magic Keyboard, you can set it up on your desk to work more comfortably. Along with the iPhone, the iPad Pro also lost the headphone jack, promoting sales of their AirPods. The Touch ID was also removed and replaced with Face ID, which is the facial recognition software. The Apple Air 3, released in March 2019, was shown to be the 66% faster than the previous models with the A12 Bionic chip. Retaining the Lightning port and headphone jack, the iPad 3 Air has many differences from the Pro models in the same year. The 7th generation was released in September 2019 and rocks a bigger 10.2-inch Retina display along with a faster 2.33 GHz Apple A10 Fusion processor and a heavier 3 GB of RAM. It supports the 1st generation Apple Pencil, and you can also connect a smart keyboard with it. Starting at $329 USD, the 7th generation iPad comes in 3 color variants: silver, space gray, and gold. Shown in March of this year comes the iPad Pro 4. Its edge-to-edge liquid Retina display is immersive and stunning, featuring technologies like ProMotion and True Tone, which makes your screen more responsive and gorgeous. The cameras include a 10-megapixel ultra-wide for shooting beautiful landscapes and a 12-megapixel wide camera for those amazing photos. LiDAR scanner is a new feature. It stands for light detection and ranging. This feature allows you to measure distances without pulling out your handy tape measure. Augmented reality is a feature that the new iPad Pro is a master at. Use it when designing your kitchen, when you want to see furniture fit in your living room, or to create animated videos within your home. This iPad is the most advanced handheld tablet on the market right now and can aid you in whatever task you're looking to accomplish.